Hi, my name's Graham Jones. I was born in a little village in between Halifax and Bradford, a place called North Arham. I'm from a family of 7 children. We didn't have much money, probably the poorest family in the village, but we were always well clothed, well fed, well looked after.
Would you have regarded yourself as a Christian as a young child? Would you have kind of...
I would have done, yeah, because we used to go to church. We're in Halifax. And there were something in the back of my mind always that whenever I had big business decisions to make, my Christian upbringing always come in. And in the hard times, and when things were bad, we all go through rough times. I used to pray, but I think I stopped going to the church when I was about 14. So that was that, and then when we left school, all of us, as each one of us left school, my dad gave every one of us a trade. And he said, if you've got a trade, you'll always be able to make a living. I did it in locksmithing. We went to night school 2 nights a week and 1 day release. When I was 21, I went on an advanced course down in Northampton to the Master Guild of Locksmiths. Paid for it myself. It were over 3 months and it were residential. I got all my advanced certificates in locksmithing. And then I met a guy and he said to me, have you ever thought about working in London? And he said, because I know a company, a really good company, that are taking people on. But the company that I worked for in London, I worked very hard for them in the week. When it got to Friday, they allowed me to come back to Yorkshire for the weekend. They were good to me. I came home one weekend and I met my wife. And when it got serious, she says, Graham, I'm a Yorkshire girl. I'm not living in London. So I came back and started my own business. And I built it up into a big group of companies that turns over about 6 million a year. And a good, profitable company. We sell 14,000 different security products. So it's built up to a good business.
You become a locksmith apprentice. Gradually you formed your own business, you met your wife, and things seem to be going great. And obviously they're still going great now in terms of your business, but there's obviously a part of your life where things started to go off the rails. Let's get into that. When did that start? What did it look like?
When I was about 35, 36, I've been in business for about 10 years. Nice house, nice car. But I got into this thing. When you're in business, it's not easy. You have to work a lot of hours and it can take up a lot of time, big thing out of your life. Also, you're under tremendous pressure. When you get a lot of people working for you, you've got to make sure that the money's in the bank every month and every week to pay their wages and pay for all the materials. And it puts you under pressure, does that. Anyway, I got into this thing where I would have a go home and I'd have a whiskey, pour myself a whiskey. I'd have a couple of whiskies. Well, that couple of whiskies, every day, every year, it seemed I was drinking more and more until I was probably drinking a bottle of whiskey a night. As a result of that, my wife and I split up.
Did this creep up on you?
Yeah, it did.
So it's only now as you look back you realise what you were doing, but while you were in that kind of starting off with the odd drink, it becomes more drinks, it becomes a bottle. That just gradually snuck up on you.
Yeah, it did. Me and my wife, before she had her first child, we used to have a drink every night, a bottle of wine or whatever. Remember, she came home one night, she says, Graham, I've got some fantastic news. And I said, what is it? She says, I'm pregnant. I said, oh, that's great. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll get a bottle of champagne. And she says, no, hang on, Graham. While I'm pregnant, she says, I won't be drinking any alcohol. She says, I'm not doing anything that would harm our child. And I remember saying to her, that's a bit drastic, isn't it? Now, that's the difference between a big drinker and an alcoholic. And I didn't want to stop. And at that point, she was saying to me then, because she weren't drinking, she says, I think you're drinking a bit too much, Graham. And all the rest. Why don't you leave the drink alone tonight? You can leave it alone if you're an alcoholic, but you always go back to it. It's a progressive illness. It always gets worse. It never gets better.
How worse did it get for you then? What was your lowest point?
I was drinking a bottle of whiskey a night. The day I realised that I had a problem was one morning, my daughter, who went to the local school, Dad, She says, I'm singing in the choir at school tonight. She said, will you finish work early and come and watch me? I said, yes, I will. That day I finished work early and I drove into the village, and you turned right to go to the school, or you went up the lane and you went to our house. When it got to turning right, I could not turn the car right. I had to go home and have a drink. Then I knew there was some big problems. In a couple of hours I could drink a bottle of whiskey. And that's how it were with me. I knew I had a big problem. But to the outside world, owned a company, a nice car, I had a lovely house. See, a lot about the drinking is not the drinking, it's your thinking. It's about your head. I went out and I went to watch some football on TV in the pub, and I stayed there for about 14 hours. The day after, I was really poorly, and that's when I contacted Alcoholics Anonymous. I stopped drinking for a month, and I went to the meetings. One of their main mottos was, let go and let God. It's all about handing your life over to God, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's too powerful to handle on your own, is alcoholism. You need God to do it. Some of the people in Alcoholics Anonymous call God an higher power, but it's all having a faith and a belief in God. Alcoholism is a fatal illness, and unless you do something about it, then it progressively gets worse. And I know many, many people who have died from alcoholism. Alcoholism doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you're a millionaire or you're on the streets. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. It doesn't matter who you are. I believe we are wired up a little bit different. When we take a drink, we want to take another. We have a saying in AA, and it says, one drink's too many and 20's not enough. So if you don't have the first drink, you can't get drunk. So leave the first one alone. I went to this meeting in Bradford. I used to go and sit there and listen. And then there was this lady talking one night, and she said, if you're struggling to stop drinking, this illness is too powerful to deal with on your own. Hand your life over to God and let God do it for you. So I'm sat there and I thought, what does she mean by that? Does she mean pray? What? How do you do that? When the meeting were over, I went to see this lady and I told her my situation. And she says, Graham, tonight when you go home, find a room where you can be on your own. She says, and just cry out to God. She says, you don't have to get on your knees. Just sit there and ask God. Say, God, I need you to help me. Please help me. Tell God everything, and I did. And I cried my eyes out. And I thought, if this don't work, I'll probably die. I had a drink that night, and then I went to sleep. But the morning after, I was going, every 3 months, I used to go down to London and meet up. We used to have a mini convention, meet up with a load of other locksmiths. And I was going down there on the Monday morning to London, big drinkers in this thing. So I was up early, and I woke up at 5 o'clock that morning. Where the words come from, I know. They were from God. And I just sat on the bed, on the edge of the bed, and the words come out of my mouth, and I just said, it's okay now, Graham, the drinking's finished. You don't have to ever drink again. And something inside me knew that were right. And so I got up, I went into my drinks cabinet, and I got all the alcohol that was in there. I put it all into a black bin liner, and I went to the dustbin outside, put it in the dustbin, and I says, that's it, it's finished. And in October, that'll be 25 years ago, and I haven't had a drink since. The desire to drink was removed, and I haven't wanted a drink. God put his hands on me that night, and so I found a church, and then I became a Christian. And all I can say is that the last 25 years have been the best years of my life. And God has blessed me in many, many ways. All I know is that it's a million times better than life was before.